You're playing too small. Unlock the Wealth Version of You. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. There is nothing more expensive than a life unlived. Not the house, not the car, not the dream vacation. The real cost is measured in what you never claimed. The bold moves you didn't make. The opportunities you let pass, because fear wore a convincing disguise. Playing small isn't harmless. It's a debt you keep paying with your peace, your power, and your potential. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize they're doing it. They call it being humble. They call it being careful. They tell themselves, I just want to make sure I'm ready. But what they're really doing is waiting for validation. For the right timing, for someone to tell them they're allowed to want more. But you don't need more permission. You need more truth. And here it is, the version of you that walks with confidence, speaks with clarity, moves with vision. That version isn't a fantasy. She already exists. She's not waiting on a miracle. She's waiting on a decision. This book is about unlocking that version, not chasing her, not building her, unlocking her. Because she's already inside you, buried under expectations, outdated narratives, and polite obedience to roles you've long outgrown. You don't need to earn her. You need to remember her. As Dr. Brené Brown once said, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both. This book is a call to choose courage, to stop shrinking in the name of playing it safe, to stop editing your dreams down to what's acceptable, to stop letting scarcity write your story. You'll be challenged here, not with hustle, but with honesty. You'll be asked to look at the beliefs you've inherited, the boundaries you've avoided, the power you've postponed. And you'll be given tools, not fluff, identity, not just information, because lasting change doesn't come from learning more. It comes from becoming more of who you really are. So if you're tired of tiptoeing, if you're done asking for less than you want, if you're ready to unlock the wealth version of you, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, boldly, this is your invitation. The door is open. Let's walk through it. Chapter 1. The Lie of Playing It Safe. A lion raised in captivity doesn't know it's a lion. It paces inside invisible lines, decades after the cage is gone. The bars weren't just metal, they became mindset. Safety rewrote its instincts. You've been told that playing it safe is wise, responsible, even noble. But what if playing it safe is the most dangerous thing you've ever done? Most people won't call it playing small, they call it being realistic, being practical. They wear it like a badge. They whisper it in advice, don't aim too high, don't risk too much, just be grateful. But what they're really saying is, shrink, settle, stay inside the lines. What they don't tell you is that safety can cost you everything, because the lie of playing it safe doesn't just keep you from failing, it keeps you from becoming. You weren't born to tiptoe through life, apologizing for your presence. You weren't created to work 40 hours a week just to afford 2 hours of peace on the weekend. There's a version of you who knows that, a version who's louder, braver, more certain. She walks in rooms like she belongs there. She names her value without flinching. She doesn't ask, can I? She declares, I will. But you've been trained to mistrust her, conditioned to believe that ambition is arrogance, that boldness is too much, that wanting more makes you ungrateful. So you edit yourself, water down your words, keep the real you hidden under layers of compromise. And it works, until it doesn't. Until you can't sleep because your dreams are louder than your doubts. Until you wake up and realize that being liked never made you feel powerful. Until you hit every goal they told you to chase, and still feel caged. That's when the lie begins to crack. Research shows that psychological safety is essential, but not the kind that breeds stagnation. True safety is knowing you can rise, stretch, expand without punishment. It's not comfort that keeps people fulfilled, it's growth. And playing small doesn't prevent pain, it just guarantees regret. In a 2022 behavioral study on decision paralysis and perceived self-worth, researchers found that individuals who labeled themselves as realistic were also the most likely to undercharge, underask, and underperform in high-stakes environments. Not because they lacked skill, but because they feared the consequences of outgrowing their identity. The cage was never failure. It was fear of becoming more. So here's the truth, playing small may have protected you once. But now it's imprisoning you. Every time you say, I can't afford that, or that's not for people like me, you reinforce the bars. Every time you stay silent when you should speak, lower your rates to be liked, or wait for someone else to tell you you're ready, you shrink a little more. But what if safety isn't in the shrinking? What if safety is in the stepping? What if the only secure place is inside your full power? The lion doesn't become dangerous when it roars, it becomes dangerous when it forgets it can. You haven't been playing safe, you've been playing small. And that ends here. Because the door is open. It's always been open. But you'll never walk through it as long as you believe you're safer inside. The wealth version of you is watching, not waiting to be Bill, waiting to be unleashed, and she's not asking, what if I fail? She's asking, what if I fly? Playing it safe isn't security, it's self-betrayal in disguise. Where in your life are you choosing comfort over becoming? Write down one place you've been playing it safe. Then write what the wealth version of you would do instead. Act on it today. Chapter 2. Shrinking in plain sight. There's a certain kind of invisibility that doesn't come from being unseen, it comes from hiding in plain sight, from learning to dim your light just enough to blend in, to nod instead of speak, to lower your hand, your price, your power. It starts subtly. You're told not to take up too much space. Don't be too loud. Don't be too sensitive. Don't be too ambitious. So you shrink, just a little. Enough to avoid the spotlight, enough to be accepted, enough to keep the peace. And with every small retreat, a piece of your voice dissolves. Shrinking doesn't always look like failure. Sometimes it looks like being everyone's go-to, the reliable one, the peacemaker, the hard worker who never asks for more. But beneath the approval lies exhaustion. Beneath the smile is silence. And beneath the silence, a version of you is screaming to be seen. You've learned to disguise fear as humility. I don't want to seem arrogant, becomes code for I'm afraid to believe I'm worthy. I just want to be helpful, hides the truth, you're undercharging, over-delivering, and resenting every minute of it. Every time you apologize for your prices, your success, your presence, you shrink. You shrink when you defer instead of decide. When you say I'm not ready, instead of I'm afraid. When you stay in rooms where your brilliance has to be softened to be tolerated. Shrinking becomes your default posture. And eventually, you forget you're even doing it. But your body remembers. Your voice gets quieter, your posture folds in. Your gut clenches at every opportunity you pretend you don't want, because deep down you do want it. You just don't believe you're allowed to. That's not humility. That's habit. In a 2021 confidence study by the Journal of Behavioral Science, researchers found that most women underestimate their abilities by nearly 30%, while men overestimate theirs by 20%, not due to competence, but conditioning. We're taught early on that boldness risks rejection, that certainty is unladylike, that visibility is dangerous. So we shrink, not because we're small, but because we've been trained to believe small is safe. The problem is, when you shrink long enough, you begin to confuse invisibility with peace. You tell yourself you don't want the stage, the raise, the spotlight, when really you're just trying to avoid judgment. You stay in underpaying roles, accept mistreatment, tolerate low standards, not because you love it, but because it feels familiar. And familiar feels safe. But familiarity isn't the same as alignment. Comfort isn't the same as peace, and silence isn't the same as wisdom. The wealth version of you doesn't shrink, she doesn't code switch to be accepted. She doesn't downplay her dreams to make others comfortable. She speaks clearly, she moves directly. She knows that shrinking to be palatable makes your power forgettable. She doesn't beg for space, she takes it. So the question becomes, where have you been shrinking, and calling it strategy? Where have you softened your voice to avoid the discomfort of being fully seen? You don't need to wait for permission to expand. You need to recognize the patterns where you've traded truth for tolerance, where you've kept yourself small not to fail, but to fit. You're not too much. You've just been around people who benefit from you being less. This isn't about becoming loud or aggressive, it's about becoming honest. Your presence was never the problem. It was always the portal. And now that you've noticed the shrinking, you can stop rehearsing smallness. You can start stepping into the space that was always yours. Because the wealth version of you? She doesn't blend in. She builds. Shrinking isn't humility, it's self-protection in disguise. Where in your life are you pretending you don't want more? Because you fear being seen, Identify one place you've been dimming yourself. Speak or act boldly in that space today, even 1 inch louder. Chapter 3. The wealth version already exists. Michelangelo was once asked how he carved David out of a block of marble. He said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." He didn't create David, he revealed him. The masterpiece was already there, waiting for the excess to be removed. The wealth version of you is the same. She isn't someone you have to build from scratch. She isn't a fantasy or a distant reward for good behavior. She's already within you, buried under years of self-doubt, scarcity thinking, and hand-me-down beliefs about what you're allowed to be. She's the original. You've just been edited. Most people chase transformation like a finish line. They treat it like a milestone. After the next certification, after the 6 figures, after someone else believes in them. But transformation doesn't come from addition. It comes from subtraction. Removing the layers of fear, conditioning, and conformity that keep you acting like a watered-down version of your truth. This version of you already knows how to lead, how to say no, how to price her work without flinching, how to take up space without apologizing, how to speak even when her voice shakes. She isn't confused. She isn't afraid of being too much. She's tired of pretending to be less. But you've been trained to doubt her. You've been taught that becoming successful requires struggle, that you must pay your dues, that you have to suffer first, prove yourself endlessly, to earn your worth in installments. And so, the wealth version of you waits. Not because she isn't ready, but because you haven't stopped apologizing for her. In a landmark 2020 neuroidentity study, researchers found that the brain doesn't distinguish well between the self and the ideal self. When people visualized their future identity in detail, their decision-making shifted almost immediately to reflect that version. Not in a year, not after success, instantly. That's the secret. You don't grow into the wealth version of you, you choose her. You decide to start operating like her now. Not when the money comes. Not when you feel ready. Now. Now-us. Who is she? She's clear. She's committed. She's not negotiating with her dreams. She's not asking if she's allowed to show up. She's already standing in the room like it's hers. She makes decisions from vision, not fear. She doesn't shrink her rates or her voice to be liked. She's not waiting to be invited. She is the invitation. You've felt her before. Every time you spoke your truth and felt power surge through your spine. Every time you said no to something that didn't respect your value. Every time you walked away from what looked good but didn't feel right. That wasn't luck. That was alignment. You already know who you are when you stop doubting yourself. The question is, are you willing to live from that place before the world validates it? Are you willing to treat yourself like the wealth version now, before anyone else sees it? Because that's what unlocks her. It's not waiting, it's remembering. You are not becoming her. You are returning to her. Every bold move is a chisel strike. Every boundary, every yes to your vision, every unapologetic decision, it's all carving away what doesn't belong. Until she's no longer hidden. Until she's all that's left. The wealth version of you isn't a future self, she's your truest self, waiting to be revealed. If the wealth version of you already existed, what decision would she make today? Visualize her. Dress like her. Speak like her. Make one decision today as if you already are her, because you are. Chapter 4. Money is not the goal, power is. A millionaire without boundaries is still broke. Very broken confidence. Broken time. Very broken peace. Because money in the hands of someone still playing small becomes a tool for survival, not sovereignty. That's why the goal was never just money. The goal was power. Power to say no. Power to walk away. Power to choose where you spend your time, who you let in your space, what you're willing to tolerate. Because power is not loud, it's rooted. It's the energy you carry when you know you don't need to beg, prove, or convince. It's not control over others, it's full ownership of yourself. We're taught to chase money like it's the destination. Get the bag. Secure the check. Stack the digits. But here's the trap. If you chase money without reclaiming your power, you'll always be afraid to lose it. You'll make decisions from fear. You'll tolerate clients who drain you, jobs that box you in, partnerships that silence you, all in the name of financial stability. But real wealth isn't found in your bank balance, it's found in your ability to choose. The person who can walk away holds the most power. The one who isn't afraid to say, "This no longer serves me," and actually mean it, that's the one operating from wealth, because power is the soil. Money is just the fruit, and if you don't shift the roots, no amount of fruit will ever feel enough. According to a Harvard Business Review study on job satisfaction, employees with the highest salaries were not the most fulfilled. Those who felt empowered to make decisions, set boundaries, and lead their time reported the highest levels of joy and sustainability, regardless of income. It wasn't the money that made them feel rich, it was the freedom to choose. So ask yourself, where have you been chasing money when what you really crave is power? Where have you traded your voice for a paycheck, your time for approval, your vision for comfort? Because the wealth version of you doesn't just count money, she counts alignment. She doesn't chase bags that cost her peace. She doesn't perform for crumbs when she's built for kingdoms. She remembers that power isn't taken, it's reclaimed. And once you remember what's yours, you stop asking for permission. But to do that, you have to stop seeing money as a savior. Money is a resource. Power is an identity. And when you claim that identity, your relationship with money changes. You stop undercharging. You stop tolerating mistreatment. You stop putting yourself last and calling it sacrifice. The wealth version of you sees money for what it is, a tool, not proof of worth. Not validation, just a tool to express what's already inside you, and she doesn't need more time, more degrees, or more people believing in her. She needs one thing: to stop handing away her power to people, systems, or stories that were never designed to serve her. You want more? Good. But don't just chase the money, chase the version of you who commands it, because she doesn't just want freedom. She is freedom. She is choice. She is clarity. And when she moves, money follows, not because she needs it, but because she no longer needs anything outside of her to feel whole. That's power. That's wealth. And that's what you came here to claim. Wealth isn't about how much you earn, it's about how powerfully you choose. Where in your life have you traded power for money, comfort, or acceptance? Identify one area where you've been people-pleasing for a paycheck. Set a new boundary or raise your standard today. Chapter 5. Decide to expand. Expansion doesn't knock. It waits. Quietly, right outside your comfort zone, dressed like inconvenience. Not because it enjoys making you uncomfortable, but because it knows comfort is where potential goes to sleep. It knows that nothing great ever came from waiting to feel ready. We tend to treat expansion like a reward, something you earn after enough suffering, proving, or preparation. But expansion doesn't arrive when you're finally worthy. It begins the moment you decide that playing small is no longer an option. Most people think change starts with a feeling, confidence, certainty, energy. But the truth is, feelings are liars when trained by fear. If you wait to feel brave, you'll never leap. If you wait for clarity, you'll never move. Expansion doesn't start with emotion, it starts with a decision. A decision to stop rehearsing the old story. A decision to stop bargaining with your brilliance. A decision to stop lowering the bar just to keep others comfortable. Because the moment you decide, everything shifts, not because the world changes but because your posture does. You stop asking how, and start asking why not. But deciding to expand means you must first break the agreement you made with smallness. The agreement that said, "I'll play quiet to be accepted." The agreement that said, "I'll charge less to feel safe." The agreement that said, "I'll wait until I'm ready." And most dangerously, the one that said, "This version of me is enough for now," not because you're not enough as you are, but because staying here isn't alignment anymore, it's avoidance. There's nothing noble about starving your soul to feed your fear. You weren't built for beige living. You weren't created to stay in one lane. You weren't designed to plateau. You were made for depth, for movement, for rise. For rise. In a breakthrough decision-making study by Dr. Jennifer Lerner at Harvard, researchers found that people who framed decisions as identity-based rather than outcome-based were significantly more likely to follow through. When you say, "I am the type of person who expands," your brain rewires faster than when you say, "I hope I can get there." Identity anchors behavior. That's why the wealth version of you doesn't wait to feel like her. She decides to be her. Today. Before the perfect moment. Before the right opportunity. Before the applause. She doesn't grow into the decision. The decision grows her. You can feel it now, can't you? That ache in your chest when you know you're meant for more, but you're still playing in rooms that ask you to be less. That quiet frustration when you keep giving excellent work in exchange for mediocre respect. That simmering fire when you realize your potential is being kept on a leash called one day. It doesn't have to be like this. You can expand, but you have to choose it. Expansion requires one moment of radical honesty. A refusal to repeat the old rhythm, a declaration, not whispered, but decided. I'm done playing small. Say it out loud. Say it until it doesn't feel scary anymore. Say it until your nervous system adjusts. Until your decisions reflect it. Until your actions reinforce it. Until your energy radiates it. You won't expand because the timing is right. You'll expand because you finally said yes. And that yes? That's the real beginning. Expansion isn't earned, it's chosen. It starts with one decisive yes. What would change today if you stopped waiting and decided to expand? Write a bold, present tense declaration of your next level self. Speak it aloud. Make one decision today that aligns with it. Chapter 6. Permission is a cage. There's a quiet ritual many live by, waiting for the sign. Waiting for the nod, waiting for someone to say, "You're good enough now." It starts young. Raise your hand before speaking, ask before acting. Don't make waves, don't get too loud, and that training follows you into adulthood. You may not realize it, but you're still raising your hand, just in different ways. You wait for clients to affirm your worth before you raise your rates. You wait for friends to validate your ideas before you launch. You wait for society to crown you successful before you own your power. And with every delay, you give away the most valuable thing you have, your authority. Permission becomes the leash. And eventually you stop moving unless someone else is holding the end. But here's the truth you were never taught. Nobody is coming to crown you. Nobody is going to arrive with the perfect script or timing or approval. The life you want doesn't come after permission, it comes after decision. And every day you wait is a day you surrender your life to someone else's comfort. It doesn't sound like fear, though. It sounds like logic. I'm just being careful, it's not the right time. I don't want to seem arrogant. But that's the costume fear wears when it wants to sound like wisdom. What you're really saying is, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to outgrow what makes others feel safe. But expansion and approval rarely walk together. If you need validation to move, you'll always live in reaction to other people's insecurity. You'll keep shrinking yourself into spaces you've outgrown, editing your power to fit someone else's comfort zone. And eventually you'll forget what your voice sounds like when it's not performing for applause. The wealth version of you doesn't ask for permission, not because she's rebellious, but because she's rooted. She knows that every time you wait to be chosen, you forget you were born with the authority to choose yourself. She understands that approval is fleeting, but alignment is forever. According to a study by Dr. Kristen Neff, individuals who scored high in self-compassion and internal validation were significantly more resilient, successful, and less likely to burn out. They didn't wait for others to affirm them, they affirmed themselves. And in doing so, they built lives on internal truth rather than external applause. So the question becomes, who are you when no one is clapping? Would you still create, still rise, still speak, if no one gave you the green light? Because your future doesn't depend on their permission, it depends on your conviction. This isn't about becoming reckless. It's about becoming real. Real with your desires, real with your calling. Real with your enoughness. When you stop outsourcing your courage, you start moving with clarity. And when you move with clarity, you stop being movable by other people's doubt. What if you didn't need anyone else to agree? What if you trusted that what's in you is reason enough to begin? You've already waited long enough. For permission. For the perfect time, for the right conditions. The cage isn't locked. It never was. The only thing keeping you inside is the belief that you need someone else to let you out. You don't. The wealth version of you already walked through that door. She didn't wait to be asked. She decided. Now it's your turn. Seeking permission is how we disguise fear as politeness. You don't need it. Where are you waiting for validation before moving forward? Choose one area where you've been holding back. Act without asking today. Decide without delay. Move without permission. Chapter 7. How you price is how you see yourself. A mirror doesn't lie. It reflects what stands before it. And pricing is a mirror. Every number you attach to your work, your time, your energy, reflects not just your offer, but your identity. It reveals how you see yourself. It whispers what you believe you deserve. And too often, it says, not much. We're taught early that asking for more is greedy, that charging premium rates is arrogant, that humility means discounting yourself into exhaustion. So we lower the price, we throw in extras. We offer one more call, one more revision, one more chance to prove we're worth it. And in the process, we erode our own value, one discount at a time. But pricing isn't just strategy. It's self-concept. It's your internal thermostat for worth. And if that thermostat is set to survival, you'll never rise into overflow. You can't undercharge and expect to feel powerful. You can't resent your prices and expect to feel abundant. Because every time you discount your worth to be liked, you teach your nervous system that visibility equals danger. And you train your clients to value you less than you deserve. This isn't about charging thousands just to say you did. It's about alignment. Integrity. Value. When you know what your work is worth, and more importantly, what you are worth, your pricing becomes an act of power, not performance. According to a 2019 study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology, customers perceive higher-priced services as more effective, even when outcomes are identical. Not because of actual quality, but perceived confidence. And confidence, in business and life, is magnetic. When you raise your rates with clarity, the right people rise to meet you. But that requires you to stop hiding behind the affordable label. Stop telling yourself you're being kind when really, you're being small. Stop believing that being accessible means being available to everyone at your own expense. Because the wealth version of you, she doesn't play those games. She doesn't price from panic. She doesn't calculate her worth based on who can afford her. She understands that her time is not just a slot on a calendar, it's her life. And her life isn't for sale at a bargain. She knows that charging less to be liked is a form of self-abandonment. That pricing low to feel safe is how people get stuck in cycles of burnout, resentment, and invisibility. She doesn't price to be picked. She prices because she's already chosen herself. This isn't about being unreachable. It's about being intentional. Because when you price from worth, not fear, you invite a different level of respect, a different caliber of clients, a different relationship with your own reflection. So if your prices could talk, what would they say about how you see yourself? Would they say you believe in your magic, or that you're afraid to ask for what it's worth? Would they speak of overflow, or quiet desperation? It's time to stop apologizing for wanting more. To stop assuming that you must suffer to be taken seriously. To stop handing out your brilliance like samples at a supermarket, hoping someone sees the value. Raise your rates if they're too low. Protect your time if it's overbooked. Align your pricing with your power, not your fear. Because the wealth version of you, she's already priced accordingly. Pricing is a mirror of your identity. Undercharging isn't generosity, it's self-erasure. What do your current prices say about how you see yourself? Revisit one offer, service, or product today. Adjust the price to reflect the value and energy you truly bring. Don't justify it, own it. Chapter 8. Abundance isn't earned, it's owned. Scarcity whispers in 1,000 subtle ways. Don't ask for too much. Save just in case. Be grateful for what you have. It dresses itself as discipline, as responsibility, as realism. But at its root, scarcity is just fear with good branding. It tells you to expect less so you won't be disappointed, to shrink your vision so you won't get hurt, to stay small so you won't be judged. But abundance speaks a different language. It doesn't apologize for wanting more. It doesn't flinch when dreams get big. It doesn't believe that thriving must be earned through suffering. Abundance says, there is more than enough, more opportunity, more time, more support, more clients, more love, more possibility. The wealth version of you lives from that truth. She doesn't hustle to prove her worth. She doesn't settle because something is better than nothing. She doesn't cling to what's available out of fear nothing better is coming. She knows abundance is not a reward for grinding hard enough. It's a mindset, a standard, a spiritual posture. But most people are more loyal to struggle than they are to receiving. They've spent so long surviving that ease feels suspicious. They say they want overflow, but reject it when it arrives, because it feels unfamiliar, because it feels undeserved, because deep down they still believe struggle is noble. According to a study published in Psychological Science, people with a scarcity mindset show decreased cognitive capacity, reduced confidence, and impaired decision-making. Not because they're less capable, but because they're subconsciously stuck in survival. It's not a lack of talent that keeps most people stuck, it's a lack of permission to receive with ease. You were not put here to beg life for breadcrumbs. You were not born to claw your way toward enoughness. And you don't have to prove your worth through pain. Your worth is inherent. Your desires are not delusions. They're directions. And the more you trust them, the more you remember that abundance isn't outside you, it's your default setting. The wealth version of you walks like she knows that. She doesn't ask, "Can I really have that?" She asks, "What am I willing to let go of to make space for it?" Because that's the secret to living in abundance. It's not about chasing more, it's about releasing what no longer fits. Old beliefs, scarcity habits, relationships built on lack. You can't hold abundance while gripping fear. You can't receive fully while bracing for loss. And you can't rise while clinging to rules that were never written for you. So what would change if you stopped believing you have to earn ease? Would you rest more? Would you raise your prices without a second thought? Would you finally trust that the right clients, the right opportunities, the right connections flow to those who walk in alignment, not anxiety? Abundance flows where it's expected, where it's honored, where it's welcomed. You don't need to chase it. You need to claim it. You do that by showing up like someone who expects good things, who makes decisions from overflow, not fear, who trusts that saying no to crumbs opens the door to feasts, who refuses to hoard, grasp, or settle, because she knows more is always on the way. Not because she earned it, but because she remembered who she is. Abundance isn't something you achieve, it's something you allow. Where in your life are you still operating from scarcity, even when you say you want more? Say no today to one thing, an offer, a task, a mindset that comes from lack. Make space for more. Chapter 9: Boundaries, Your First Wealth Investment. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you make a withdrawal from your future. Not just your time, but your energy, your focus, your confidence. Boundaries are not just rules, they are investments. They are the financial policies of your identity. And how you protect your peace says everything about how ready you are for wealth. People think boundaries are about keeping others out. But true boundaries are about keeping you in, your power, your clarity, your priorities. They're not walls. They're doors with locks you control. They're not punishments. They're declarations of self-respect. The wealth version of you knows this. She doesn't just protect her time, she values it. She doesn't just decline what drains her, she doesn't even entertain it. Not because she's rude. Because she's clear. She understands that every yes to misaligned energy is a no to expansion. But if you've been conditioned to be accommodating, to be nice, to be the one who's always available, then setting boundaries can feel like betrayal. Saying no can feel like abandonment. But here's the truth: betraying yourself to avoid disappointing others is the fastest route to resentment, and the slowest path to wealth. Boundaries are not just emotional, they're financial. Every minute spent in chaos is a minute stolen from your vision. Every toxic client you keep is a block to the one who's ready to pay your full rate. Every overcommitment is a delay in your destiny. According to research from the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology, people with poor boundaries experience higher burnout, lower income growth, and reduced decision-making capacity over time. The absence of boundaries isn't just exhausting, it's expensive. But boundaries aren't built in rage. They're built in clarity. You don't need to be fed up to draw the line, you just need to be done. Done with shrinking. Done with explaining. Done with over-functioning in relationships where you're under-respected. The wealth version of you doesn't wait until it hurts to honor herself. She's proactive, not reactive. She sets the standard early. So what does that look like in practice? It looks like office hours that protect your creativity. It looks like ending conversations that drain your energy. It looks like pricing without apology, scheduling without guilt, declining without over-explaining. It looks like being willing to disappoint others temporarily so you don't abandon yourself permanently. And yes, at first it will feel uncomfortable. People may push back. Guilt may rise. But you don't grow by avoiding discomfort, you grow by walking through it with conviction. Because the life you want requires a version of you who's no longer available for everything and everyone. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred. They are how you protect your capacity to serve at your highest level. Without them, you burn out. With them, you build momentum. You build trust in yourself. You build space for what actually matters. The wealth version of you isn't overbooked, overwhelmed, or over-explaining. She is intentional. She is steady. She moves with grace, because she moves with structure. And every boundary she enforces is a signal to the world: I know what I'm worth, and I act like it. Boundaries are your first wealth investment. Honor them, and everything rises. Where are you leaking time, energy, or focus because of unclear or unkept boundaries? Choose one boundary that needs strengthening. Set it today, not later. Not after it hurts, now. Chapter 10. Burn the backup plan. Backup plans sound wise, responsible, strategic. But sometimes they're not safety nets, they're escape routes dressed in logic. When you leave the back door open, it's only a matter of time before fear finds its way in, and you start asking questions like, what if this doesn't work, instead of, what if I refuse to fail? The backup plan is the quiet killer of commitment. It whispers, just in case, but what it really means is, I don't trust myself. It keeps you half in, half out. One foot in your calling, the other in your comfort zone. You tell yourself you're still figuring it out, when really you're still trying to stay safe. But expansion doesn't happen in safety. It happens in decision. The kind you don't unmake when it gets uncomfortable. The kind that doesn't come with a fallback. That's where the real transformation lives, not in the plan B, but in the full-bodied yes to plan A. People don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they don't fully commit. Because when things get hard, they retreat to the plan they never truly let go of. The side gig. The mediocre job. The person they swore they were done with. And they call it being realistic. But what they're really doing is choosing familiar fear over unfamiliar power. The wealth version of you doesn't operate from contingency. She's all in. She doesn't keep spare identities in the closet just in case the bold one doesn't fit. She knows that backup plans often become self-fulfilling prophecies. The more you plan for failure, the more energy you give it. The more you prepare to fall, the less likely you are to fly. In a 2020 study from the University of Pennsylvania, researchers found that participants who created detailed backup plans before pursuing a goal were less motivated and performed significantly worse than those who went all in. Not because of skill, but because their focus was divided. Their minds were already rehearsing retreat. That's the silent tax of a backup plan. It makes you doubt. It gives fear a foothold. It splits your attention. And success doesn't come to the most talented, it comes to the most committed. So burn it. Burn the plan that says, if this doesn't work, I'll go back to what I hate. Burn the resume you keep updating for jobs you swore you outgrew. Burn the identity you only wear when you're afraid the real you won't be accepted. Burn it all, not in anger, in trust. Trust in your vision. In your capacity. In the version of you who doesn't just hope things work out, she decides they will. This isn't about recklessness. It's about resolve, the kind that says, there is no turning back. There is only rising. The kind that lets the bridge burn behind you and still walks forward with peace. Not because there's no risk, but because you finally trust yourself to handle what comes. The wealth version of you doesn't need guarantees, she needs alignment. She needs integrity. She needs your full yes, and that's what you give her when you stop building exit strategies for your destiny. So ask yourself, what have you been keeping just in case? What plan, what habit, what identity are you holding on to because you're scared to leap? Then let it go. Burn it. Not out of fear, but out of faith. Because when you remove the backup plan, the only direction left is forward. Backup plans dilute commitment. Burn them, and watch your focus sharpen. What are you still holding on to just in case, and how is it keeping you from going all in? Identify one backup plan or fallback habit. Release it today. Delete it. End it. Walk away. Chapter 11. Becoming Undeniable. There's a moment when a person steps into a room and everything shifts, not because of what they're wearing, not because of how loud they are, but because they've decided, silently, immovably, that they are no longer available for invisibility. That moment doesn't come from a course or a milestone. It comes from embodiment. It comes when you become undeniable. Undeniable doesn't mean perfect. It means anchored. It means no longer negotiating your presence, your power, or your worth. It means no longer entering rooms with your shoulders hunched, your voice tentative, your brilliance edited to fit the mood. It means you've stopped auditioning and started owning. We're taught to soften, to accommodate, and to make our power more palatable. We're told, don't be too confident, don't stand out too much, don't act like you know. And we internalize that script until we're ghostwriting our lives for other people's comfort. But there comes a moment when you get tired of shrinking, tired of pretending, tired of folding yourself in half just to fit into boxes you never chose. And in that moment, if you're willing, something inside you stands up. The wealth version of you doesn't try to be undeniable. She simply is. She walks into rooms with the energy of someone who has nothing to prove. Not because she's arrogant, but because she's done asking for permission. She speaks with the clarity of someone who no longer doubts her voice. She charges with the confidence of someone who has finally stopped discounting her power. Undeniable doesn't mean loud, it means certain. It means people feel your energy before you speak. It means your presence disrupts the room, not because you force it, but because you've decided you belong. That kind of certainty isn't given. It's claimed. In a study on executive presence published in the Harvard Business Review, researchers found that presence, more than credentials, was the leading factor in perceived leadership potential. What separated those who advanced wasn't always skill. It was identity. It was posture. It was the quiet power of someone who radiated authority without asking for it. You become undeniable when you stop shrinking your voice to keep peace, when you stop accepting crumbs and start commanding your table, when you no longer explain your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. This isn't about ego, it's about embodiment. You don't get there by waiting. You get there by choosing, by walking differently. By speaking with conviction, by aligning your environment to match your future, not your fears. You dress like her. Think like her, move like her. Until the world has no choice but to adjust, undeniable means you become the proof that it's possible, that it's powerful, and that it's allowed. Not because you're loud, but because you're unshakable. Not because you fight for the spotlight, but because you are the light. There will always be people who try to dim you, but that's only because they can't yet handle the brightness of someone who's done shrinking. You didn't come this far to be overlooked. You didn't rise through fire to blend in. You were never meant to be digestible. You were meant to be unforgettable. So stop performing smallness. Start embodying your next level. Speak when it's uncomfortable. Walk into rooms like you were born to be there. Let your decisions reflect your destiny. Because the moment you become undeniable, the world responds accordingly. Undeniable isn't loud, it's embodied confidence. Stop asking to be seen. Be the one they can't ignore. Where are you still dimming yourself to fit, when you were born to stand out? Show up boldly today, on camera, in a room, or in your content, as if the world already knows your name. Then act like it.